of the pathogen. What kind of pathogen causes what kind of diseases? So we'll start with bacteria, viruses, then we'll go to um, protozoa, etc. Okay. Okay. So I think 4 of you have joined. Okay. So let's start with a quick recap of the last class. Rifat has a question. Can you repeat genetic disorders part a bit? Yes, Rifat. Sure, I will. So basically, so let me give the recap as well today. So it's me giving the recap today so that I can also answer Rifat's query. So in the last class, we just started with this chapter, which is human health and diseases. In this chapter, we have to read about certain diseases and the fundamental basis, the biological basis for those diseases. Before going forward to diseases, we discussed what is health, right? So we defined what is health, and health is defined as the overall well-being of any human, which includes physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being. So the organism or the human has to be well from all aspects. And disease or disorder is just the opposite. This disease means not at comfort. And disorder is again not proper regulation. So disease and disorders happens due to many factors that affect the health. So 3 of the major factors that affect the health were, which we discussed, were pathogens, and pathogens mostly infect. So it causes infections, and through infection they cause disease. For example, tuberculosis, typhoid, AIDS, and all these diseases that which are infectious are also happening through pathogens. Second important factor that affects health, apart from these microbes, is the lifestyle and the way we live, way we eat, etc. So that includes our nutritional requirements, that includes obesity, deficiency disorders, drug abuse, lack of sleep. All these affect health and causes some or the other disease or disordered state in the body. The third factor was genetic disorders that we discussed. Now, as we have already studied in chapter 5 and 6, you know what are genetic disorders. Basically, they can be inherited, right? They happen due to genetic defect. And with humans are normally born with genetic disorders because it's the perturbation at the level of genes. For example, we have studied in 6th chapter the molecular basis of inheritance, that there are genetic disorders like color blindness, sickle cell anemia, etc. Right? Even genetic factors can also lead to cancer. So it increases the susceptibility to cancer. So there's a gene which, if gets mutated, it causes cancer. In humans, it's called BRCA gene. The gene is named as breast cancer 1, BRCA1, and then there is BRCA2. It's not like this gene is only regulating or only causing breast cancer, but it was first discovered in a breast cancer. That's why it's named as BRCA. But it's related to other cancers as well. So is this clear, Rifat? Does that answer your query? Do you understand this? Are you there, Rifat? Yes, okay. Your microphone is not working yet. Okay, anyways, so please get your microphones fixed, people, so that I can hear some other voice in the class, more voices, discussing. Okay, so towards the end, we were trying to understand infectious and non-infectious. This is the segregation or categorization of the diseases which we have to study commonly. So you all know that what are infectious. When we group them broadly under infectious and non-infectious diseases, what are infectious diseases versus non-infectious? So let's begin with this. The first thing in today's class, infectious versus non-infectious. Yes, anyone? What are infectious diseases and what are non-infectious diseases?
Diseases which are like transmitted easily, like are infectious.
Transmitted easily. What do you mean by transmitted
Like,
easily?
if someone has a cold and like you sit close to them, and then you probably catch a cold too because it's air disease.
So you give an example of common cold, right?
Yes.
Common cold is an infectious disease. Yes. Why is it is an infectious disease according to you?
Because it can like spread from one person to another.
So infectious means which can spread from one person to another, right? Okay, perfect. We have also been joined by Afifa here. Hello, Afifa, how are you?
Hello, sir.
All good?
Yes,
I got notified that you will be joining from today. So how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
You can say hello to your batchmates, Rifat, Hiba, Fatima, Atif, and Hanifa. So FIFA, we have just started, like we just discussed the common basic fundamentals of human health and diseases. So we just started with chapter 8. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So just pay attention and discuss. Okay. Cool. Yes. So me and Fatima were discussing that infectious diseases are those which can spread from one person to another, but do they spread on their own or something is required? There has to be some reason for their spread. Because what I'm trying to ask you is, why does only infectious diseases spread but not the non-infectious? Can you give me one example of non-infectious disease also, Fatima?
Non-infectious disease is
So
cancer.
yes, you said common cold and non-infectious, you said cancer, right?
Yes.
So this is very fatal, right? Fatal disease. So give me some infectious disease which is of the level of cancer in non-infectious, because comparing common cold and cancer is like not not fair, right?
AIDS.
AIDS. So yes, H. So AIDS. You know what is AIDS stands for? AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Okay. And why does AIDS spread but cancer do not spread? You have any idea of this, or anyone has any idea can answer? Why is AIDS infectious but cancer is not infectious? No idea, people?
Because AIDS is caused by a pathogen and pathogens can spread from one person to another, while cancer is not necessarily caused by a pathogen, so it cannot spread.
Exactly. So you need something. So the disease is happening. So whenever we have to understand whether the disease is whether the disease can be spread or it's communicable or non-communicable or infectious or non-infectious, we have to go to the root cause of the disease. So AIDS is caused by a virus which is called HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. And cancer is, in this case, let's take an example of, let's say, breast cancer or any cancer, that's caused by any mutation, a genetic aberration, a mutation, or abusing certain drugs or carcinogens, right? Carcinogens are those elements or those chemicals that can cause cancer upon exposure. in the body. Like nicotine is one carcinogen. So smoking or chewing tobacco increases the chances of cancer by multiple folds in any tissue or in an organism. But once it happens in a person, it cannot spread on its own to the other person, right? So that's the baseline difference. And the difference lies, yes, Atif, tell me.
Sir, can caffeine cause cancer?
Caffeine, I mean, I don't think so. Like my answer would be no, because to cause cancer, caffeine is actually a stimulator. It's not carcinogenic. And as far as I know, experimentally, like evidence-wise, there are many things which are supposed to be carcinogenic or which are hypothesized to be carcinogenic, but if you see the actual proofs, the data, nicotine is proven carcinogenic, which is present in tobacco, but caffeine, I don't think that caffeine has the potential to cause cancer, at least at the concentration at which it can be consumed by any human. If you just drink caffeine 3 liters or 4 liters every day, then it's some kind of a situation which does not occur anytime. But I don't know about those, like excess dose, but even in the excess dose, I don't think it causes cancer. No, like there's no evidence of a caffeine or anyone who's very much dependent on caffeine or likes coffee or drinks lots of coffee having cancer because of that. So there is no report as such. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the answer will be no, as far as we know currently. It's a stimulant. It stimulates your nervous system. It stimulates your it affects your sleep wake rhythm, sleep wake cycle, but it does not causes cancer. Yes, so let's define the infectious and non-infectious components first. Write down an infectious disease. An infectious disease can be easily transmitted. Can be easily transmitted. Infectious disease can be easily transmitted from one person to another. From one person to another through biotic or abiotic components. So it needs something, right? So biotic. What are biotic components?
A living component.
Yes. So biotic means living, any vector or anything, bacteria, virus, or any mosquito or something. Biotic or abiotic components means just by air, sneezing, surface contamination, etc. Okay. But infectious diseases has the ability to spread from the diseased person to a healthy person. Write down a non-infectious disease. A non-infectious disease does not spread from person to person. Non-infectious disease does not spread from person to person, but can be fatal. But can be fatal. Infectious also can be fatal, but non-infectious also can be fatal. Okay, it's not like if it is non-infectious, it's not a serious one. So in infectious, AIDS, and in non-infectious, cancer is a good example. Is it clear? Now let's come to some common diseases that we are going to study. So let's divide it like this. Let's first start with a pathogen. Let's start with bacteria. Okay. So diseases caused by bacteria. So for these diseases which are there in a syllabus, you have to study the cause, the mode through which they spread, what are the symptoms, what do they do in the body, and last, if we get there, for every system, if there is any specific severe symptom, or how can we prevent ourselves from it, something like that. Okay, or yes, their diagnostic tests. So 4 points are important. So let's start with any one disease. Any bacteria you know that causes infection. I can think of Salmonella first. You know Salmonella? Its full name is
Yes, sir.
Salmonella typhi. So this is a bacteria, a pathogenic bacteria. So bacteria may or may not be pathogenic. When I say pathogenic, it means this is a pathogen. It harms always. There are good bacteria as well. Can you name any good bacteria which you actually need in your body or does not cause any harm to the body?
Penicillin.
Penicillin is
Uh,
okay. Penicillin is not bacteria. Penicillin is what kills bacteria. It's an antibiotic. It is secreted from a fungi called Penicillium notatum and kills the bacteria present in its surrounding. Do you understand? Is it clear? Penicillin is a chemical compound which acts as an antibiotic. It kills bacteria. It's a toxin to bacteria and it is secreted by a fungi called Penicillium notatum. Hence the name penicillin comes. Okay. So it kills the bacteria. Any other bacteria that you know the name of and is a good bacteria?
E.
So
coli.
lactobacillus.
Lactobacillus. Yes. Lactobacillus is present in curd, right? It helps in the curdling of the milk. We eat curd. When we are eating curd, we are eating lots and lots of these bacteria in curd. Millions and trillions of these bacteria we eat, we take in our diet. So yes, they are not bad, they're useful. But Salmonella typhi is not like that. It's a pathogenic bacteria and it causes a disease which is known as, what does it cause?
typhoid.
Yes, it causes typhoid fever. Now, what is typhoid? Anyone? Anyone knows what is typhoid? Anyone has had typhoid or seen someone who had typhoid? Any idea about this disease in general? What happens?
I know it like affects the small intestine.
It affects the small intestine. It actually affects the whole body, but yes, the pathogen generally enters through food or water, Salmonella. So it first starts infecting the small intestine. You are correct. So it is spread through, write down, the pathogen is spread through. So mode of spread, you have to know. So what is the mode of spread for Salmonella typhi? Contaminated food or water. So biotic component or abiotic?
Abiotic.
It's a living substance, it's biotic. Food can be biotic as well, but water is abiotic. So mode of nutrition, mode of spread is through contaminated food and water. And because both of these go to the stomach and the intestines, why is it not easy to infect stomach? While because before entering the small intestine, this bacteria should enter the stomach. For that matter, our food pipe. So we can understand that food pipe, nothing stays there. So everything goes down. But why not stomach? Why starting with small intestine?
The stomach
Because
contains
of the
hydrochloric
presence
acid.
of HCl.
Sorry, two people spoke at the same time. Two people spoke at the same time. So someone come again.
Because of the presence of hydrochloric acid in stomach.
Because of the presence of hydrochloric. Yes, Afifa, very good. What does hydrochloric acid does in the stomach? It has two roles. It helps in digestion by breaking down everything. And when it's doing that, it also protects us from pathogens. If pathogen go into the acid, it will break down them as well. But then what do you think? How do they evade from the stomach and contaminate or infect our small intestine? Because if they cannot infect the stomach, they must have been killed, right, in the stomach. And in fact, it happens. A lot of things that we eat are not, we do not get sick because the food was clean. Maybe the food was not that hygienic, but still you manage to not fall sick because the hydrochloric acid in your stomach helped you. But then how can it affect small intestine if it got killed in the stomach? Any
Maybe
idea?
it has like a resistant cover or membrane of sorts.
Okay. You are going through the, yes, so basically you're correct in a way that these bacteria are present as cysts. You know cysts, they make a sheath, a covering around itself where it's inactive, but it goes through very extreme conditions, and whenever it finds favorable conditions, it will start growing and multiplying, and that condition it finds in the small intestine. So that's where it starts causing. So write down. Pathogens enters the small intestine and can also migrate to other organs through blood. The pathogen enters the small intestine and can also spread to other organs through blood, right? Now these pathogens that we are talking about, do you see that they actually have adapted to live within us, right? They have adapted to live in the system. They have adapted to go through the acid in the stomach if they are entering through contaminated food and water, and then use the opportunities to the best of their advantage. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Does it make sense? Yes. So even this pathogen has evolved or adapted to stay or to live or to flourish inside humans and cause typhoid fever when the number goes beyond a particular threshold. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So that is mode of spread. Now tell me, what are the symptoms that happens? Anyone knows the symptoms in typhoid? As I told you, it's fever, so there is a high fever. Typhoid is known as typhoid fever because it has a very high fever, almost going till 40 degrees Celsius. And because it's affecting intestine, so you will have stomach ache, right? Because of the intestine getting affected and infected, there will be pain because of toxins produced, and the intestine will lose its normal rhythmic movement, which is called the bowel movement, right? Or it is also called rhythmic contractions and peristaltic movement, right? Remember peristaltic movement from class 11th? Afifa,
Yes, sir.
do you remember Afifa? Yes. Atif remembers.
Yes.
Okay, so if the peristaltic movement are affected, then what will happen? Constipation, right? The fecal matter will not be ejected out of the body properly and on time, and as a result you will have loss of appetite and weakness. So do you understand that all the symptoms are connected together?
Yes, sir.
Loss of appetite and weakness. Makes sense, right? If you have high fever and stomach ache, probably you will not have proper bowel movement, so you will be constipated. Then you will not feel like eating, so there will be loss in appetite. And if you are not eating, you will be feeling weakness as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, next thing is how can you? Symptoms. Sorry, severe symptoms. So I'll write in red. So these are just the general symptoms that occur in typhoid. Sometimes when this is unchecked, or you do not get a proper diagnosis or a proper treatment started in time, then it can lead to very severe symptoms and severe cases. So one of the severe symptoms is perforation of small intestine lining. Now, can you imagine if the small intestine of an organism starts getting perforated? Then what will happen? What do we mean by perforations, people?
Like multiplying.
That's not perforation. That's called growth, or that's called proliferation. Oh, I understood. Where are you confused now? So there are two terms: proliferation and perforation. Who will tell me the difference between the two? Both are used in terms of bacteria and lower organisms and their effects. Yes, who will tell me what is proliferation and what is perforation?
Proliferation is the multiplication of organism, like when an organism increases in number.
Either the organism, or in case of unicellular organism, it is the cell number.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So proliferation is increase. Let me just summarize. So proliferation is increase in the number of the cells or organisms. And what is perforation?
Sir, I think perforation is the opposite of proliferation. Like it will be decrease in the number of cells through factors. So basically, the I think the cells die.
Not really, actually. But anyone else who would like to try, who has a better idea of this word, proliferation versus perforation? What is perforation? Because Atif explained proliferation correctly. No, perforation. Yes,
Perforation
Afif.
is like small holes being made in intestine.
Exactly. Perfect. Perforations means you are making small holes because of that toxin or that substance. The membrane of anything is getting degraded, and there are small holes in that layer. That's called perforation. So if there is perforation happening in small intestine lining, you can imagine that there will be internal bleeding, and a hell lot of severity will come in. And in some cases, this can even lead to death. Okay. So perforation of small intestine lining leading to death. If it is unchecked and untreated. So do you understand proliferation versus perforation, everyone? Please write it down. Proliferation, division and differentiation of different type of cells. And perforation is creating small pores or holes in a cell or a membrane. Okay. Okay, perfect. Now let's come back to diagnostics. How will you diagnose for a typhoid? Any idea? So there's something called as Vidal test, which is not explained in your NCERT, but just know that Vidal test is very effective and common way to figure out that if the infection is happening due to Salmonella typhi, and can it be called a typhoid. Okay, so write down Vidal test. It's not very well explained, but I'll still dictate you certain things. Write down. In Vidal test, or you can write down Vidal test is a kind of antibody antigen reaction test. Antibody antigen reaction test, where the presence of Salmonella typhi bacteria, is diagnosed from the blood tissue. Is diagnosed from the blood tissue. Is it clear? So remember Vidal test for typhoid.
So what's the full form of Vidal?
What's the full form of Vidal? That's a good one. I don't know, like I don't remember. I've never thought of learning it. But why don't you look up and tell us, Atif, if it has a full form? It must be.
No, sir. Vidal is the name of a scientist.
Is it? Vidal does not
Yes,
have.
sir.
Vidal is the name of the scientist who discovered this test or something? Because Vidal is a type. It's not a very standalone different test. You don't do anything which is very, very different from other kind of antibody antigen. Even, do you know the rat test for COVID, rapid antigen testing?
Yes.
So there are two tests. One is culture testing. So they take a swab from nasal cavity and culture and look at do a PCR and look at the levels of the DNA of the virus, right? Second thing is you do RT-PCR. You just second thing is you do a rat test, rapid antigen testing. So if you ever have had COVID, like in the near past, or you are currently having COVID, you will have those antigens to which antibodies can bind, and you can detect it. So where did antigen came from? Of course, either you have recovered from a COVID very recently, or you have COVID right now. So it's a very rapid way to say that whether there is antigen in your body or not. Vidal test also is similar. It forms antigen antibody reaction, and with that we can understand that this bacteria, the infection due to Salmonella typhi has happened. So, but I'm quite thrilled to know that Vidal is the name of the scientist. What's the full name of this person, Atif?
Yes, sir.
I think Vidal has to stand for something, I don't know. Is it George Fernand Vidal, something like that? GF Vidal. Is it the same person who figured this test?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Oh. So I read about this person, but I didn't know that he. Thank you for this information, Natif. So see, in this kind of discussions, teaching goes both ways. So yes. So you understood what happens in Vidal?
Oh,
Yes. Tell me, Hannah.
Hamas, I came late, so sorry.
Yes, you just joined. I
Sir?
noticed that. What happened?
I overslept, sir.
Okay. Okay.
I came from school early, and I thought that but I couldn't. Sorry, sir. So sorry.
Cut to cut, one after the other tests. I understand. Okay, so Vidal is the name of the person, Georges Ferdinand Vidal, who figured out Vidal test. It's a very old one. It's a very old test, but there is a very interesting story behind this Vidal developing and the whole typhoid thing. So there was a cook, a female cook by profession, and her name was something Mary or Mary something. You know, I remember the name Mary because she was nicknamed as Typhoid Mary. So if you would like to find out her name, I don't know if it's given in NCERT, but there was this one woman, she was a cook by profession, and she spread typhoid to so many people through her food, through the food that she prepared. So people used to fall sick. When they started falling sick one after the other, first they thought that there's something wrong with the food, but they realized that there's something wrong with the person who's cooking it. So Mary was nicknamed Typhoid Mary because she was a carrier of typhoid. She herself was not ill, and that was interesting. She didn't show any symptoms, so no one ever, you know, kind of suspected her. Suppose if you are sneezing and coughing and you have a bad throat and you are ill, so you will look ill, right? Then someone can just suspect that, okay, she is ill and she's preparing the food, so the food is contaminated from something. Yes or no? But she was a carrier, and she continued to spread typhoid for many years through her food. And when later on it was figured out that she was a carrier for typhoid, she was named as Typhoid Mary. You would like to figure out her full name as well. Okay, it's interesting. Okay, so the diagnostic test is Vidal. Let's go to, so this is all you have to know about Salmonella typhi from your examination point of view. Now let's go to another pathogen, important one, which is called Streptococcus. And the name, yes, tell me, Anna.
The previous.
Sorry, come again.
Could you show the previous, how to say?
Yes, the screen, you want me to scroll up the screen? So we started with infectious and non-infectious today. We discussed about what are infectious and non-infectious diseases, one example of each, why infectious spread and why non-infectious do not spread. The reason is that infectious disease are always caused by pathogens or some causative agent that can get transferred from one person to another very easily through any biotic or abiotic component as it is defined on your screen. Whereas in case of non-infectious, we do not have that component which causes the disease transferring. For example, in cancer, it can either happen through mutations or something going wrong, or drug abuse, or any carcinogenic substance abuse, or it can just be the mutation in any gene that causes cancer. Now that cannot get transferred. Okay. Then we started with diseases caused by bacteria. So we are going pathogen wise. We are first starting with bacteria. So first we did was the bacteria Salmonella typhi. It's a pathogenic bacteria and it causes typhoid fever. Mode of spread is contaminated food or water. So clearly it first enters the intestine and then goes to other organs as well. And symptoms are high fever, stomachache, constipation, loss of appetite, and weakness. And all these symptoms are related to each other. And severe symptoms are perforation of small intestine lining, which can even lead to death. And then the diagnostic happens through Vidal test. And it is worth mentioning here that Vidal test is like kind of a antigen antibody agglutination test, which means antigen binds to antibody and forms a agglutination to aggregate. Okay, next we are starting with Streptococcus, and the full name will just tell you what disease it caused. The full name is Streptococcus pneumoniae. So what disease it might be causing? Pneumonia. Exactly. But it's not only Streptococcus pneumoniae that can cause pneumonia. There is one more bacteria named as Haemophilus influenzae. And again, I always teach you to look at biology through its words, through the terms. So Streptococcus, where the word cocci means it's telling you about the shape of the bacteria, right? Streptococcus is coccus shaped bacteria, cocci shaped. Do you
Yes, sir.
understand? Yeah. And hemophilus, what does it tell you? Hemo, the word heme in biology means people. Hemophilia. Blood. Okay. Is it clear? People, is it clear? Say yes, no.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And word philus means philic or philus.
So loving.
Yes, loving or liking, you can call it anything. Yes. So these, it's a bacteria, okay? Its full name is Haemophilus influenzae. Okay, Haemophilus influenzae. These two bacteria are capable of causing pneumonia. And Haemophilus influenzae specifically likes blood. It can, derive nutrition from blood. So even when you kind of culture these bacteria, you can culture it on blood agar media. It's easily culturable there. So these two are responsible, write down, they cause pneumonia. Now, what is pneumonia? Anyone? I think you must be knowing someone, or someone among you must have had pneumonia as a kid. I developed pneumonia when I was small, very, very small as a kid. What happens in pneumonia? Any idea?
Sir, can you ask a doubt?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, the word influenza is used for like flu-causing organisms, right?
Yes. So I was
Sir, your
thinking
voice
that
is
someone
breaking.
might bring it up. Or is it now audible?
Okay, yes, sir. It's now audible.
Okay. Yes. So I was just thinking if someone of you brings it up, I'll explain. Just for the sake of time, I was not bringing it up myself. But yes, the word influenza kind of gives you a feeling that it is a flu virus, right? Because flu normally are caused by viruses, like the common cold or the viral flu, we call it, right? Bird flu, etc. Right?
Sir, your
So
voice is breaking. I don't know if it's my problem or it's breaking
is
for
it
everyone.
breaking for others as well? FIFA, Hannah, is my voice breaking for you as well?
No, sir.
Yes or no?
No, not for
No.
me.
Okay, so Atif, I think it's your network issue because it's not breaking for Hiba, FIFA, and others.
Okay, sir, I'll leave and join and see if it fixes the issue.
Okay. So I'll hold up the question. You can rejoin again, and then we'll discuss. Yes. So in the meanwhile, when he'll come, we'll talk about this. But Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenzae causes pneumonia. So others, any idea what happens in pneumonia? What is the disease?
Problems in breathing. It causes problems in breathing.
Exactly, Afifa. Perfect. Very good. So if you tell me logically, if there is a problem in breathing, which organ might have been affected? If there is constipation, stomach ache.
The lungs.
Yes. So if there is constipation, stomach ache, we can understand it's the intestine or the stomach. If there is problem in breathing, so pneumonia affects which organ? It's lungs. So in pneumonia, write down, infection happens in the alveoli. In the alveoli of lungs. Now you remember alveoli from class 11th respiration chapter? What
Yes,
are
sir.
alveoli? Yes, Aditya, if you're back, can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, sir. No, it's
Yes. So alveoli are air sac. They get filled with air when you breathe in, right? These are the small structures. So these two bacteria. So I was just telling you, Atif, that the word influenza must be giving you a notion that it's related to flu, and it probably is a virus, right? Like viral flu, bird flu, etc.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's Haemophilus influenza as a bacteria, okay, not a virus. Is it clear?
Yes,
It's
sir. But
not
still,
related to the
why is it not named Haemophilus pneumonia? That makes things easier, right? Why did they choose to name it influenza?
no, but it's not like pneumonia as a species of bacteria. You know, remember the genus and the species name? Same species
Yes, sir.
cannot be in two different genus, no? Homo sapien. It's not like there can be a Homo sapien and a Leo sapien. You understand? There can be two species in the same genus, but there cannot be two different genus in the same species, right? So
Yes.
Streptococcus pneumonia is a particular different bacteria that also causes infection in the lungs, in the alveoli. So pneumonia as a disease emerges. And we named it pneumonia because we first figured out that Streptococcus pneumonia was the causative agent. Then we realized it's not alone. Haemophilus influenzae also causes pneumonia, the same disease. So now we cannot change the name to pneumonia or influenza. It's pneumonia, the disease name. But there are two bacteria that can cause it. You understand? They can also cause it together as a cocktail. Do you understand, Atif? Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very well. So in pneumonia, infection happens in the alveoli of the lungs. And because of this infection in the alveoli, what happens is, write down next, the alveoli gets filled with fluid. Something common, similar happens in case of COVID as well. One of the severe symptoms of COVID is that the lungs develop pneumonia-like symptoms. If you have read any COVID person's report who got severe and went on to ventilators and was admitted to ICU, it's probably because they developed pneumonia-like symptoms and their lungs got filled with fluid because of COVID virus attack. Because COVID virus also infect which organ? The lung, the respiratory tract and the lungs. Yes, majorly. So infection in alveoli or in lung causes fluid to get deposited there. Because in infections, there are fluid discharge. But with other organs, the thing is that the fluid can get secreted out or can get removed from there. But lungs have just an entry point, no exit point. You understand? You understand, people?
Yes, sir.
So when the fluid starts getting, when the fluid fills in the lungs, it cannot be easily removed. And in very severe conditions, when there is no other choice, then actually they put an incision and put a pipe in the lungs and then take out liquid from there, to save the person's life. So in pneumonia also, alveoli gets filled with fluid. Now you can understand what happens. There will be severe problems in respiration. So you can write down, gets filled with fluid, leading to severe respiratory problems. Severe respiratory problems. So with this, we come to the symptoms. Can you tell me what are the symptoms of pneumonia? Just guess the symptoms. You don't have to remember.
Cough.
Yes, very good. Keep guessing. Yes, Fatima. First is you get cough, and of course there's an infection, so you will get high fever. And in any infection, there will be a fever, right? And this time, because there's body fluid so you also get chills. You feel very cold. The lungs feel very cold, and the body feels very cold. So cough, fever, chills, and
Difficulty breathing.
yes, difficulty in breathing. So breathlessness. So you are breathing, you are taking, your nose is not blocked here, your nose is open. So you also feel difficulty in breathing in case of asthma, right? In case of asthma also, the patients cannot breathe properly. But there the problem is constriction of the passage. So the lung, bronchioles and the bronchi, they constrict and you try to breathe, but the air cannot go in. So that's a different kind of breathlessness. But in this case, you can breathe. Your lungs are open, your nose is open, but when the air goes into your alveoli, the exchange of gases does not happen effectively because these alveoli are flooded with water. Okay, and gases do not very well exchange very well through like this watery thing, dissolved in the water. So because of this water filled cavities, the air cavities are now water filled, so no exchange or very minimum exchange happens, and the body feels that as if it is not breathing. There is oxygen shortage, and it can be measured by the SpO2. Remember, in case of COVID also, from last 2 years, you must be hearing this word SpO2. The oxygen level went down. Everyone is looking for oxygen cylinders, right? Why? There is so much of oxygen around. Why can't you get oxygen? Because you are breathing, but that breathing is not effectively providing oxygen to your body. So when oxygen is not produced, then the SpO2 level gets low. Now, anyone knows what is SpO2 means? SpO2.
Is it something that is related to spatting?
It is related to
No, it's okay.
bacterium. No. It's
Spatting.
related to spell it. Can you spell or write what you're saying, Anna? Yes, Atif.
Is it? I'm not sure, but I heard it somewhere. Is it
Yeah,
a
just
specific partial pressure of oxygen?
it is something like that, but there's nothing like specific partial, because if you're saying partial, it's not specific then, right? The partial pressure is PO2. What is SpO2? What is S? It's not specific.
Yes,
It's
so
called
that's what I'm not sure about.
Yeah, it's called saturation pressure. So if you talk about partial pressure, so partial pressure can never be 100%, right? Partial pressure means, what is the partial pressure of oxygen in atmosphere? Tell me, how much oxygen is present in the atmosphere? This is some 5th, 6th graders thing. The composition of atmosphere, quick. I don't know. If I say atmosphere is 100%, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? Yes.
32%.
How much?
32.
32. My God, no. Oxygen is 21%. Nitrogen is 78%. Prox. So you know that the partial pressure of oxygen is not where it's very high as compared to other gases like CO2, methane, and others. But nitrogen is the highest partial pressure. It's contributing the most. So 21% oxygen is there in the atmosphere in total. But you must have seen readings of SpO2, like if you get your SpO2 tested, it will be 99% or 100%. Normally, it means saturation. So whatever amount of oxygen our blood, our RBCs could have carried, they are carrying it full. That's called, so we do not care about the partial pressure of oxygen. That does not matter much. What matters is the saturation pressure of oxygen in our body. So suppose you have in 1 liter of your blood, you have 10 million oxygen carrying sites. If all the 10 million sites are bound to oxygen, if all of them are carrying oxygen, it means your SpO2 levels will be 100%. You understand?
Yes.
Yeah. So as this disease or as the lungs get infected and this fluid gets deposited, now when we breathe in, we do not get enough oxygen transferred from alveoli to blood because it's now flooded with fluid. So many of these oxygen carrying sites present on hemoglobin are not carrying oxygen now. So there is enough oxygen is not present to carry for all the transporters. So the so the saturation pressure of oxygen is low in our body. If it goes below 60%, it's very, very harmful. It can cause, because which organ requires the most oxygen in our body? Any idea? Which organ of your body utilizes the most oxygen?
Heart.
Heart.
Brain.
What?
Brain. Your brain uses alone around 20% of your total oxygen in the body. So when you breathe 1 kg oxygen, 200 grams or even some slightly more than that is just utilized by brain. So when oxygen SpO2 goes very, very low, first organ that's affected the most is brain. So the person becomes unconscious. Have you never seen that if a person cannot breathe, the person becomes unconscious? First, it's not like the person directly dies. If you do not allow a person to breathe, then the oxygen level will keep falling, and the first thing that will happen is brain goes unconscious. You have not seen this even in movies or things. It's a very general thing, right? We all know about it.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, can you now connect dots? That is the point of education, right? Just don't see around and okay, he fainted because there was no oxygen. Sometimes when you are intensely, always, if you join a active exercise regime, or someone who's gymming, the trainers will always tell you that whenever you are holding weights or pulling or pushing weights, breathe in and breathe out. Do not forget to breathe, right? They say that. Yes or no? Because
sir.
you are just using lots of oxygen by your muscles, and your brain is anyways using a lot of oxygen. So you are just burning lots and lots of oxygen in your body. And if you do not breathe, then probably you'll just faint. And it happens also, if you sometimes do not breathe. So many people have this habit of holding the breath when they are lifting something very heavy. You should not do that, because it can cause just a severe shock, hypoxic shock to the brain, and in the absence of oxygen, you might just faint. So in COVID also, people become brain dead before they die. It's a very general thing. All the people who died in COVID, most of them developed first infection in the lungs, fluid got filled, then their brain slowly died, and then the body died. Can you now connect the dots? Why, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Very well. So the symptoms are difficulty in breathing, and in severe cases, let's come to severe symptoms. So I'm writing all severe symptoms in red. So in severe symptoms of pneumonia, what happens is oxygen is so low in the body that it causes the lips and the fingernails to turn bluish, grayish or bluish, you can say. So write down. In severe cases, the lips and fingernails or fingertips, also in some cases the ear, fingernails, may turn bluish. This tells you that there is severe scarcity of oxygen in the body, and the person can only be saved by putting on artificial ventilation, by giving oxygen mask. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Right. Good. Okay, I was about to say something and I forgot. Anyways, when it will come to me, I'll tell you. Now let's go to quickly mode of spread. How does it spread? Is pneumonia infectious disease?
Yes.
Yes. Because the pathogen is in the body, right? And it's in the respiratory system. So any pathogen which affects the respiratory system can very easily get transferred, because we are always breathing in and out. We are coughing, sneezing, etc. Right? So what is the mode of spread? You don't have to remember or mug up. You can just tell me logically.
When we cough or sneeze,
Yes, Afifa. Let's go to Afifa, Atif. Okay.
When an infected person sneezes, the aerosol, the particles, when they enter your nose, will be affected.
What particles? What particles enter?
Like when you sneeze, there's some water droplets.
So water droplet do not cause pneumonia, no?
But
There can be water.
they contain the infected particles, the pathogens.
What are the pathogens? What is the infected particle or infected pathogen? You're right. Just tell the name.
The bacteria.
Exactly. So basically, when you sneeze in those aerosols, there are bacteria. And that bacteria will enter the healthy person's body and then go and multiply there in the lungs. Because when we will inhale, whatever we will inhale through our nose, it will directly go to our respiratory tract and we will get infected. Simple, right? Write down mode of spread. Write down. A healthy person can acquire the infection through respiratory exchange. Through respiratory exchange. Coughing, sneezing, inhaling droplets. So that is one mode.
So could you please repeat it?
Okay, that's difficult. What did I just say? A healthy person can acquire the infection through respiratory exchange, like coughing, sneezing, inhaling droplets from an infected person. Second, let's say you are not directly getting it from the cough, sneeze. Can you still get the infection from some other ways?
So physical touch?
Yes, contact, physical contact with not just with the person, but any other thing. Suppose the person sneezed on a glass and now you use this glass, you touch that glass and you touched yourself, you touched your nose, your mouth, your eyes, and the bacteria just entered your respiratory tract. So it can also be spread right down. Sharing substances with the infected person or coming in contact with the infected surfaces. Coming in contact with the infected person or surfaces. Now, this can be avoided for the first part if you wear mask when you go near the patient, and for the second part, if you keep your hand sanitized and all the surface sanitized around the person and do not use the infected utensils, etc. So hand sanitizers, basically the same thing we do for COVID. We know how to handle infections very effectively, right? We learned it the hard way, but yes, we did. We learned it. Okay. So I'm giving you, so along the same lines, let me give you certain things as homework, which you would love, you will enjoy doing. I'm telling you certain names. Write down. One is diphtheria. Diphtheria is diphtheria pertussis. And dysentery, and very famous plague caused by the mouse plague. So these three, I'm giving you homework. You have to figure out what is the causative agent. Causative agent. Is it an infectious disease? If yes, what is the causative agent? A bacteria, virus, or what? And mode of spread, and if organ affected. Okay, everyone?
Sir,
What? Yes, Anna.
for plague, should it only be like what plague? So black plague or
Sorry.
this plague, right? Should it be like black plague or what's it?
Black plague. Yeah. See, plague is something like it is homework for you, but you figure out black plague is just the famous name. It's called. It was a big pandemic. Basically the name is bubonic plague. The full name is bubonic plague, and it occurred in Eurasian region and the North African region very long back in history. It's the most, so this black, it's called Black Death. So Spanish flu and Black Death, these two are the recorded pandemics in the history which are the most fatal and the most what you can say most dangerous pandemics recorded in human history. So it happened somewhere around in the 14th century, very early, and then in the 16th century also something happened. So I think in 14th century the Black Death or this Black Plague happened, and like villages after villages were wiped out because no one knew what is happening, no one could understand the reason, there was no medical infrastructure, nothing that we could do, right? So those who got infected used to die. And then the similar kind of thing was Spanish flu.
Yes,
That
sir.
was another big pandemic that killed millions and millions of people. Now we have 7 billion population. So if from 7 billion 10 million dies, that's not that big a number ratio wise, but still 10 billion is 10 million is a very big number. But imagine when the population of the world was just 50 million or 100 million, and out of which you lose 10 million or 20 million, it's just 20% of the population, you understand, of a region.
Yes, sir.
So that was a big pandemic. Now we have very good infrastructure and we can fight with pandemics. Still, COVID took a lot of toll. COVID caused a lot of death, more than any modern pandemic ever did. And the numbers are suspected to be heavily understated by countries and their governments. But anyways, yes. So figure more about the plague. This is your homework. Everyone noted this down?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Very good. So about bacteria, I'll teach you about these: pneumonia, Haemophilus, salmonella. And when you will do this homework, we will discuss more about the bacterial part. Let me also give you insight about some viral pathogens. Okay, so this was bacterial, disease caused by bacteria. Let's go to disease caused by virus. And I will start with the pandemic now, because see, even if it's not in the NCERT, it's a trend. Pandemic is something which has changed the course of life, not just the course of life, the course of how humanity used to live. So, there is a concept now developed: pre-COVID era and post-COVID era. We are still living in the COVID era, but when COVID will completely normalize, that from that day onwards, there will be post-COVID era. And the COVID era actually led to a lot of advancement in a very small period of time. In 2019, we were all very happy, jolly, doing everything offline. People were going to offices. There was no concept of work from home for many companies. Even only the big top 4 or 5 companies like Google, Microsoft, the privileged employees used to work from home, right? Then came COVID. And all of a sudden, every company, small or big, just understood and accepted the model of work from home, which tells that it can be done, right? Even we are studying through online mode, right? Do you remember online modes of teaching being this popular before 2019?
No, sir.
Any one of you was taking an online class, you were sitting 1,000 miles away and your teacher was 1,000 miles away and you were talking about virus before 2019? No, right?
No.
So the world all of a sudden became very, very connected, and technology, not just in the field of telecommunication, but also in the field of medical sciences. We developed a vaccine so fast. Usually before COVID, all the vaccines, even the fastest vaccine that was developed, took 3 to 4 years. And for COVID, we developed a vaccine within 7 months. This is the record. The fastest vaccine humanity has ever developed was for COVID. Technology is we pushed all the limits to fight this pandemic. Okay, so it has impacted everything. So many exams can just ask you about all your NEET, even common aptitude tests, even general knowledge exams. They are all asking about COVID. So let's start with COVID only. So disease caused by virus. First is COVID-19. Why do we call it COVID-19? What is the full form of COVID-19? Anyone knows?
Coronavirus disease 2009.
Yes. CO is for corona, VI for virus, D for disease. Or some people say coronavirus induced disease. So I is for induced. Both are correct. So coronavirus induced disease, which came in 2019, December 2019. The first case was reported in Wuhan, China. So COVID-19. Now, what causes it? Caused by the virus. What is the name of the virus?
I think SARS-CoV-2.
Yes, it's called SARS-CoV-2. Now, what is the full form of SARS? What is SARS? Remember SARS? SARS as a pandemic started earlier as well. I think, if I'm not wrong, in 2002 or 3. There is something called MERS also that happened. Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS. There was a virus that started affecting humans and it started spreading through camels. So that's why it was just localized to Middle East. So the name was given Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS. You know the meaning of SARS? It spread in a few countries. Those countries are now called SARS nations. SARS stands for severe, acute. Severe means severe, acute means very rapid, fast. Chronic is long term, acute means short term. Severe acute respiratory syndrome. Okay, this is SARS. CoV is for coronavirus. And 2 means it is the second. SARS-CoV-1 caused the SARS pandemic in the countries. It was a close cousin of this virus, SARS-CoV-2. And why do we call them coronavirus? Anyone has any idea? What is the word corona? No idea, because this virus looks like this. Now let me first draw it. It has lots of spike proteins on its surface. So the virus gives appearance of this. Imagine a ball with lots of pinheads pinned to it in all directions. So here also there will be pins. So everywhere there are pins attached. You understand? Now if you look at the virus, something like this we used to draw as kids in our drawing books. What? How many of you have drawn a scenery? 3 mountains, between 2 mountains, a river flowing, in between 2 mountains, you will draw. What we used to draw like this as kids? Come on, people.
So sun.
Exactly. We used to draw sun like. So does it look like the surface of the sun to you?
No.
Not
No,
really,
but
sir.
not really. Like this is not how the surface of the sun looks, but the idea is that the surface of the sun has always some flares coming out. These are called solar flares, or like this. That's why we represent it. So it looks like, and the surface of the sun is called corona. Corona. You have studied this word before also. I have only taught you. Corona radiata. Tell me, where? Corona radiata. It is the covering of the ovum in the female. The outermost covering is called corona radiata. Remember? Again, that covering
Yes, sir.
gives the appearance of a sun surface. So that's where the word corona comes from. So it's not like coronavirus is something new. We know about coronavirus from last 50, 60 years. We are studying a lot of them. But this is a new virus that just mutated from animals and started attacking humans and caused this COVID-19 pandemic. So it is caused by SARS-CoV-2, which is a coronavirus. Corona is a family of viruses which contains many viruses. SARS-CoV-1 and MERS was also caused by the cousins of this virus from the same family. And how does it spread? It spread from human to human through respiratory droplets. Just like in case of pneumonia, the bacteria was spreading. Here the virus is spreading. Here also the symptoms are, what are the symptoms of COVID-19? Apart from difficulty in breathing, which is a severe symptom when the lungs get filled with fluid. Brain death is another severe symptom when the brain dies because of not responding.
So sneezing.
Sneezing. Sneezing is, I don't think sneezing is a symptom, but if you have cold, you got cold because of the infection.
Runny
Not
nose,
really. Yeah, running nose, fever, cold,
cough,
sneezing could be cough, yes. And loss of taste and smell. That was one very, very peculiar feature in COVID, right? Some strains of COVID causes loss of taste and smell because they damage the olfactory epithelium, the epithelium which helps us to smell in our nose. It damages that as we know it. And what else? Low SpO2 because of fluid filled lungs. So these were the symptoms. And how to diagnose COVID-19?
RT-PCR tests, DPA tests.
Yes, either a rapid antigen test or a real-time, sorry, or this one, what do you call it? Yes, real-time polymerase chain reaction, RT-PCR test. These are the two methods. Okay. So is it clear, everyone?
So this might seem unrelated, but what is the difference between a dry cough and a wet cough?
Yes, dry cough is without sputum. Sputum is that mucus substance which comes after you cough. So sometimes when you cough, your mouth gets, so from your throat sputum comes out, right? That mucus substance which is also present in the lining of the nose. If your cough contains sputum, it's wet cough. Sometimes when you cough, your throat is irritated, but the sound comes like very dry. You cough like but there is no sputum coming out. I'm sorry to imitate it, but you understood. In dry cough there is no sputum, and your throat, kind of after continuous dry coughing, it gets irritated and you lose some layers. So that's the difference between dry cough and wet cough, and they both are treated differently. People often don't know the difference, so whenever they get cough, they go and buy a cough syrup. Cough syrups are also of two types, one for dry cough and one for wet cough. Now, if you can go and figure out which chemical is used to treat dry cough and the other different chemical used to treat wet cough. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Does that answer your question, Atif?
Yes.
It's wet because it comes with sputum, very sticky mucus, and dry, there is no sputum. Okay. So I'll see you in the next class, everyone. on Wednesday, and we'll continue with more viral diseases, and then we'll come to protozoa disease, and we have to study malaria in detail. We have to also study the life cycle of malaria pathogen in detail. So that we'll do in the next class. Okay, please do your homework, and I'll see you